Good morning, Burgundy here. It is Monday morning, Monday, March 16th, and it is about 12:30. And as you can see, I actually had a problem with my heart last week. Not the first time that I've had it. My heart, because of a congenital heart defect or whatever, my heart rate goes very, very high. My resting rate is always around 104, and the resting rate for an adult my age should be anywhere from 60 to 100. So 104 is pretty high, but I actually ended up having last Thursday, it go up to 260, and I could feel the pain, and I could feel that something was going on. So I actually called an ambulance for the very first time ever. I worked on an ambulance for 15, 16 years, but I've never actually called an ambulance for myself. So that was an interesting experience. And I actually had a female paramedic, which is, again, a new first for me. Normally, I've worked with female paramedics, but I've never had a female paramedic tend to me. I've actually had the St. Albert EMS group, medical group, out to convert, or what they do is called cardioverted your heart. So essentially, if you've ever seen defibrillation, like on the movies and on TV, they actually can do it with chemicals or with the pads. So I, of course, always choose to do chemicals, which hurts like, well, basically you could actually, it's kind of a neat thing to watch. Definitely not a neat thing to experience. I actually was cardio converted, or they tried to cardio convert me and it didn't work. So then they took me to the ambulance. They had me in the ambulance. They hooked me up. They had 2 IVs put in, and they attempted to do a couple different techniques, which I'm not going to talk about. And that didn't seem to work. So they took me to the Sturgeon Hospital, which the ER was packed. I don't know what the heck is going on, but the ER was packed. So I spent the, 6 or 7 hours waiting to see a doctor, which of course I'm in no big rush. I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything. So I'm at home all day long, and I ended up sitting there, and finally later in the evening, I finally got to see a Dr. Gold, which was kind of an interesting. I've always felt weird discussing this, but I can actually pick up people's energy, and I can see color or an aura around people. And he was literally gold, which I found very interesting. He probably looked at me like, okay, she's a little bit crazy. So I said, yeah, I'm ready to go home, because it was in the evening, and I need to get home for my family. And I've been keeping an eye on my heart rate, and I've been able to keep it under, I think yesterday, it went up to, I was sitting around 120, but not the end of the world. I always feel very short of breath and feeling a little bit dizzy, which is definitely not something you should be experiencing. Chest pain is definitely not a good thing. As I I taught at St. John Ambulance and as a contractor for 20 some years, and I actually used to examine for the province people that were wanting to be EMTs. I examined for the province, and always enjoyed doing that. I love teaching the most. I love teaching everyday people the most, particularly, and say whatever you want to say about this. I find that most males, people working on the rigs, the most fun to teach. So I'm hoping that this heart rate, I return the heart rate monitor tomorrow, and then we'll follow up with a seeing my car. We're gonna follow up with my cardiologist and Sivaku Maran, or Dr. Sivaku Maran at the U of A, and hopefully we can figure out what the heck we're doing. So what has happened to me now, this is my 4th time going into SVT, it's called, or supraventricular tachycardia. And I'm not going to explain or draw what that is. I used to love to draw on the whiteboard or what everything was, whether it was talking about the brain or the heart. I loved teaching. I loved teaching everyday people, and I miss it so much. Particularly people that English was their first language. I found, or sorry, not English, that was their first English was their second language. I always found very enjoyable. I always took the time to help people do their exams, because of course in a first aid course there's an exam to do at the end of the day, which of course I'm not a big fan of exams. I'm sure nobody else is. But I always did whatever I could to make sure that people were successful. I never liked the idea of failing anybody. Failing people during an exam, whether it's EMT or EMR or the different levels of first aid. I think sometimes I was well known around